Now, it's now my extreme pleasure to introduce a friend and colleague of mine from UNES, some of our committees where we work together, Lorenza Jachia. And Lorenza is Secretary of the UNES Working Party on Regulatory Cooperation and Standardization for WP6. She works in policy and making of regulatory action, a big evangelist when it comes to standards for the Sustainable Development Goals, and is one of the leads behind Gender Responsive Standards Declaration. And she also is involved in regulations as tools to attain SDG 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And amongst other things, she has authored several hundred reports and publications for UNES. To you, Lorenza, so you can put the context from UNES's perspective.
Thank you so much, Ray, and thank you for this opportunity. I would like to start by placing the current crisis in a broader context. And the first feature that I'd like to focus on is the extreme uncertainty and volatility of the current situation. And I'd like to project a chart, if I may, that gives you a measure of this uncertainty. And this chart, it's going to come up shortly, is giving you the World Uncertainty Index, which is constructed by the IMF using the frequency of the word uncertainty in country reports published by the Economist Intelligence Unit. And it captures uncertainty in individual countries, but also around the world. And this indicator has increased tenfold over the last decade. It shows that the last month of 2019, before the onset of this crisis, had already been characterized by exceptional turbulence on international markets, with multiple threats that we all remember. And that then ushered in with 2020, the crisis caused by the novel coronavirus and this difficult and painful crisis that we're living through right now. Second, I'd like to also mention that the current health crisis also plays in the context of Agenda 2030 and our collective efforts to move towards a more sustainable world. Again, as the Executive Secretary mentioned, the current crisis and Agenda 2030 are closely linked. On the one hand, the achievement of the global goals really are critical, and the extent to which we achieved or we didn't achieve or progressed on the goals itself was such an important determinant of the impact of the crisis. In countries where there is a fragile public health system, in which a large part of the population does not have access to sanitation, or that have many workers in precarious employment or that are homeless, the impact will be just that much more devastating. On the other hand, of course, the pandemic impacts on the achievement of the goals. It will impact upon the fight against poverty. It will increase the SDG 1. It will increase the number of people at risk of famine, SDG 2. It will worsen education outcomes. It will slow economic growth and employment. It is too early to say what the impact of COVID-19 will be on human development in its different dimensions. But UNDP has projected this impact and has shown that the indicator for human development is set to drop for the first time when it was since when it was introduced in the 90s. So now it is in our hands what happens next. And we can rewrite a different narrative, and taking advantage of the stimulus packages and taking advantage of the opportunities that are before us in order to make sure that we rebound from this crisis in a more resilient and a more sustainable development paradigm.
Thank you very much, Lorenza, and thank you very much for setting the scene there from the perspective of UNESCO.